You are listening to the HR Happy Hour Network, home of the At Work in America podcast. The HR Happy Hour Network is sponsored by WorkHuman. HR is about to change for good with the power of human intelligence. By combining AI and the rich data of WorkHuman's #1 rated employee recognition platform, human intelligence answers HR's most demanding needs, unlocking insights and capabilities that redefine talent management, cultural transformation, and employee engagement, ultimately elevating performance and, above all, people. The future of HR has arrived. Will you and your company be a part of it? Learn about human intelligence at workhuman.com and join their force for good. This episode of At Work in America is sponsored by Paychex, one of the leading providers of HR, payroll, retirement, and insurance solutions for businesses of all sizes. Are you ready to crush the year ahead? The 2025 Priorities for Business Leaders report from our friends at Paychex is here, and it's packed with insights from 600 companies on how to drive growth and get ahead. This isn't your average data dump. It includes actionable strategies on everything from attracting new hires to improving employee retention, managing HR compliance, and leveraging technology to stay competitive. If you want to stay ahead of the curve and tackle 2025 with confidence, download the report today at paychex.com/AWIA. That's paychex.com/AWIA. It's free, it's insightful, and it might just give you the edge you need. Thanks for joining us.
Welcome to At Work in America, the podcast that leads the conversation on the future of work. Proudly sponsored by Paychex and WorkHuman, we go beyond the headlines to uncover bold ideas, fresh perspectives, and the real stories of people shaping workplaces for the better. And now, here are your hosts, Steve Boese and Trish Steed, bringing you the insights and trends that will inspire what's next in the world of work.
Welcome to the At Work in America show. We are back with our annual Oscars predictions and preview show, and we are lucky enough to be joined for the second year in a row by Patrick Boese. You know him from YouTube. My friends call me Pat. Your YouTube channel is blowing up. Congratulations on that since we last spoke to you here on the show. And I highly recommend checking out that YouTube channel and subscribing. But yeah, it's great to have you. Trish, great to see you as well. I know this is a big show for you every year. You're a movie person.
I am a movie person, but I'll tell you, after pandemic, I feel like the movies have not been as good. So I'm a little less excited about this year of movies. I don't know.
Yeah, it was a little tougher for me too to get through some of them. I probably saw fewer than I typically see, and some of them were just a tough watch, and it could be a testament to my age or my crankiness. You know, some of them were just very dimly lit, and I'm like, what is happening in this movie? I can't see a thing. And
Exactly.
well, that's an old man lament right there.
I will say, Patrick, by the end of this, I think you need to weigh in on, is it our generation? Are we getting too old to appreciate some of these movies? Because I think Steve's right. There were some I'm like, is my TV too dark? Like, what's going on? Yeah. Just vision's going.
Well, I'll just say, oh, sorry.
Go ahead, Patrick.
Well, I'll just say, I know I'm known as the guy who does a lot of coverage of very bad movies. But one thing I do want to just stress is I do love cinema. I love films. And I kind of have an opposite perspective. I saw almost all of them. And I would say there are a ton of great movies out this year, especially in the Best Picture category, but even in some of the acting categories as well. So I'm excited to talk more about that.
Yeah, there are some good films. There was some I really liked a lot and a couple less, of course, but that's every year. So let's we're going to go through the major acting categories, Best Director category, the Best Picture nominees, and then maybe if anyone, has another category, they just want to throw something out just as a random, I saw this documentary and it was awesome, or I saw this short film and it was great. I did see one documentary I'll mention later, but there are 10 Best Picture nominees once again, which makes it tough for people like us to get ready for this show in a short amount of time. I'll quickly read them. There are Anora, The Brutalist, A Complete Unknown, Conclave, Dune Part 2, Amelia Perez. I can't wait to hear Patrick talk about that movie. I'm Still Here, Nickel Boys, The Substance, and finally Wicked, which is probably the movie that the most people saw, right, of this list, since it was usually popular. Did it come out in the summertime? I can't remember exactly when it came out, but it was fantastically popular and very well done as well. Let's start, though, and we'll break down these movies in more detail later. Let's start much like the broadcast does, which is this Sunday, by the way. So we're recording this at the beginning of the week. The Oscars broadcast is Sunday, March 2nd. Do you actually watch the Oscars broadcast, Patrick or Trish?
I attend an Oscar party every year.
Wow.
I'm still very much in that early 2000s mindset, I guess.
I always watch the Oscars, and a lot like Patrick, I've always had little Oscar parties, get dressed up, kind of really, just stay till the bitter end. I want to see the whole thing. This time I'm actually going to be in Amsterdam, though, so I don't know that I'm going to be able to watch it live. So I may have to watch it after the fact.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if folks over in Europe care that much about this. Maybe they do. I guess they probably do. I don't know.
I'll find out. I'll report back.
Okay. Okay. Let's start. Actor in a supporting role. I'll give you the nominees. They are Yura Borisov for Anora, Kieran Culkin for a movie called A Real Pain, Edward Norton in A Complete Unknown, which is the Bob Dylan movie, Guy Pearce from The Brutalist, and Jeremy Strong from The Apprentice, which, gosh, I wish I would have watched that one before this recording. But I'll throw it to you. Patrick, you're our guest. Maybe some thoughts on the actor in a supporting role category and your pick.
Well, I will say that with this category, I is part of going to an Oscar party. I also go do Oscar pools. So I try to make sure my ballot is as close to what's actually going to happen as possible. Betting markets and other precursor awards, pretty much unanimous in this one that Kieran Culkin will be taking home the Oscar. And I would agree with that. I think most of these other performances, and I do think it's a real shame that probably not a lot of people who've seen A Real Pain. I watched it kind of with the anticipation. It was one of those top 15 movies a lot of people thought might get a Best Picture nomination, ultimately didn't. I disagree with that decision as well. But a lot of strong, Ed Norton especially, also very good. Honestly, everyone in that category is really good, which is, very, what else are you going to add there? But Kieran Culkin in A Real Pain, it was brilliant. It's a very complex performance, and it's a very character-centric performance, and I was just very impressed by it.
You know
Trish,
what?
I know you saw that one too. Maybe you have some thoughts on that.
I would agree 100%. And I loved the movie so much. Like, I always kind of judge, would I rewatch this, like, out of choice? Absolutely. I thought he was quirky and weird and wonderful, and I just, fell in love with his character. He feels, comfortable to me. Like, I probably know 20 people that are like that in some way or another. And so he was just, I don't know. The other thing I look at, and Patrick, tell me if you do this, I look at do I actually care what happens to this character all the way through? And this was one where I was like, absolutely. I couldn't stop watching him. I thought he was enchanting. The one I would just want to mention, though, I agree too, all these were strong, but I liked the movie The Apprentice far more than I thought I would. And I thought that Jeremy Strong really did a good job, because then I went back and looked at the real person he was playing. He nailed that. So I don't think he'll win, but I thought his was fantastic too.
Yeah, I missed that one. I don't know, Patrick, if you caught The Apprentice. I was looking forward to the breakdown of The Apprentice on the My Friends Call Me Pat YouTube channel. I've not seen that yet. Maybe it'll come later. But yeah, I don't have much to add. I think I go with what you guys said. I did not see A Real Pain, but I heard great things about it, and it seemed really likely for him to win. So that seems pretty unanimous, I think. Okay, let's go to actress in the supporting role. I'll try to have more to say about this one. Monica Barbaro from A Complete Unknown, Ariana Grande, Wicked, Felicity Jones, The Brutalist, Isabella Rossellini, Conclave, and Zoe Saldana, Emilia Perez. I'll start, since I saw more of these movies than this category. Patrick's going to get horrified. I like Zoe Saldana in this category. I thought she was really good in this movie, and I like this movie more than most, I think, probably. And perhaps because I didn't know I didn't understand or know a lot of the problems that Patrick eloquently pointed out in his recent video, and he can talk about some on here. But I thought she was really good. She's kind of, to me, the star of the movie, not really the supporting character in the movie. She's in the movie really the whole way, as far as I remember, and I thought it was really good. So I liked her a lot. I also liked Ariana Grande in Wicked, a movie that I liked much more than I anticipated liking going into it. I actually saw it twice and enjoyed it quite a bit. And I thought she was really good too. And when you get to understand more of some of the Oz backstory of, wait, she's the Wicked Witch really isn't that good. I mean, the Good Witch isn't really a good witch. She's kind of a bad witch, right? And sort of getting the sense of some of that in her performance was good. So those are the two I highlighted for me. And I think Zoe Saldana was my favorite. I'll Trish, throw it to you if you have any comments on this category.
So I am the exact opposite. I did not like Amelia Perez at all. I am actually going to save it for Patrick, and please, everyone, go watch this video because
it is pretty good.
Don't watch the movie, watch his review of the movie. It's much more entertaining. I will say I love Isabella Rossellini, but I felt like she was barely in Conclave, so that was a little bit like, oh, can she really be nominated?
Yeah, she was in two scenes, I think.
Yeah,
right?
100% agree.
Yeah, but I loved Monica, is it Barbaro, for A Complete Unknown. I didn't know if I would like that movie or not. She was fantastic. And just in kind of the behind the scenes thing, she does not know how to play the guitar. She spent a long time, months and months, learning to play, learning to sing better, like all the things. And I thought she just really did a good job and pulled it off. So anyway, that's my pick.
Okay. Patrick, what are your thoughts?
Well, I would agree that Zoe Saldana did give a good performance in Amelia Perez. I think she was one of the highlights of the film. Now, does that mean of a film that I thought, overall was bad? What we do on the channel, I describe to people, it's kind of like Mystery Science Theater 3000 combined with a textual analysis of a film and trying to see structural issues and other things that could have been done better. But I don't know if just saying like she was the best part of a bad movie for me is enough to support her in this category. I do think she'll win. But if I had to pick one of the other performances, I think Felicity Jones, this is maybe not necessarily who I'd pick, but just to give another perspective, I think as Erzsébet Toth in The Brutalist, I think she has a very underrated performance because she really was a great part of that second half of the movie. And then I would echo the concerns with Isabella Rossellini as Sister Agnes. She was not in the film. And I think a lot of people were pointing about how powerful her role was. And then you do kind of get that climactic scene where she has a role to play. But for the most part, she very much was sidelined. Part of the point of the film, it's about Catholicism and the boys' club that it is. But in the case of this award, probably wouldn't go for her.
Yeah. Patrick, I'm just curious. I mean, obviously, Steve and I have both seen Wicked a number of times, and we'll, of course, talk about it in more depth when we get to the bigger award. But what did you think when you're looking at like an Ariana Grande, someone who's actually a really talented singer? How did you feel about her as an actress, though? Because I know you've got a different perspective than we do on movies.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough. Some actresses or some people from entertainment can kind of go into acting naturally. Like, for instance, Lady Gaga, A Star is Born. I think, most people would say she gave a very great performance in that one. But then you can kind of also get people like Harry Styles who are continually lambasted by the internet and by critics for not being good at acting. But let me just put this out there as someone who maybe wants to act at some point. Acting is difficult. It is incredibly hard to do, especially in a dramatic setting. It's way harder than it looks. And when we're looking at it as viewers, as critics, as fans, we just see it effortlessly when it's being done well. But when it's not being done well, it's pretty obvious. So Ariana Grande, I went back and forth with her throughout the film. There were scenes I felt she did well. There were scenes I felt she had room for improvement. I think she could get better. Do I think she should be in this category? Realistically, no. But that's just my opinion.
Well, I think that's what it's sort of hard for them to separate maybe when you think of someone who's really talented in one aspect of what they're doing, right? Her singing was great, but then you're right, her acting maybe wasn't up to par. So at least compared to the other women we're talking about, right?
Yeah. Good stuff. Let's keep moving because there's a lot to cover here on the At Work in America Oscars preview and prediction show with our special guest, Patrick. My friends call me Pat on YouTube. Actor in a leading role. I think a good category, solid category top to bottom. Adrian Brody in The Brutalist. I will admit to have not seen this one. Timothy Chalamet, A Complete Unknown. Coleman Domingo in Sing Sing. Ralph Fiennes, or Rafe Fiennes, I think is what you say his name, Conclave. Sebastian Stan in The Apprentice, who, for some quarters will be the odds-on favorite, I think. But I'll start to you, Patrick. Actor in a leading role. A lot of good stellar movies here, good performances, well-known actors. So what do you think here?
Well, prior to last night, I would say that Adrian Brody was the odds-on favorite. I still think he is, but last night, we saw Timothée Chalamet, I believe it was the SAG Awards, take home the leading actor nod there for his role as Bob Dylan. The race is up now. Brody is still probably the favorite. In terms of who I would pick, it's very difficult for me. Timothée Chalamet, in my opinion, I'm going to believe this until the day I die, was snubbed in the 2017 Oscars. He lost to Gary Oldman in Darkest Hour instead of getting the nod for Call Me By Your Name. Should have won that year. I'm just always going to believe that. So part of me says, maybe let's give the guy, kind of more of a career Oscar, more of a makeup Oscar. And let me be clear, not one that's entirely undeserved. I think what he did in emulating Bob Dylan, in singing, all that stuff was very impressive. That being said, I'm kind of very sick of the people winning these awards who are just pretending to be someone else. And then voters say, well, he looks like Bob Dylan. Well, he looks like, Winston Churchill. Let's give him the award. That's not what acting is. And was he good at acting in A Great Unknown or in A Complete Unknown? Yes. But then when you look at Adrian Brody, you look at what he did from minute 1 of that movie to hour 3, it's impressive. And
the movie's still going on right now.
He was so well, but the thing about it, you watch it, you don't think it's that long. The intermission really does help. But Adrian Brody, brilliant performance in a brilliant film. Also, a shout out to the other 3 nominees as well, especially Ralph Fiennes or Ray Fiennes. He was also excellent. Everyone, these are all great performances, but I would have to go with Adrian Brody. I think the range he demonstrates and how he conveys this character of Laszlo Toth, just with his face, with his delivery, with everything, you truly see it as a master performance. I'm not going to be sad if Timmy wins, love the guy, but I would go with Adrian Brody.
You know what, Patrick, I think I agree with you more than I ever agree with Steve. So you're right. Timothée Chalamet was excellent. He should have won years ago for Call Me By Your Name. One of the best movies ever, I think. I've watched it probably 50 times. I agree with you on Adrian. I think Adrian's performance was great. That was a hard movie to sit through, 3 hours and 35 minutes, even with an intermission. That was one, too, where I was doing that little question in my mind, like, do I care? Do I care what happens to him long enough to sit through a 15-minute intermission? And I did. I just want to mention, though, Sebastian Stan, and so you both haven't seen The Apprentice, or you have? Like, Steve
I
had?
know.
Okay, so I did not want to watch it because of just the political climate we're in, right? But let me tell you what, it is a good movie. It kind of covers Trump from, say, his 20s into probably early 30s. And it was as realistic, I think, as the director could make it, because Trump is trying to sort of come back and sue him for all sorts of inaccuracies. But things were
shocked. He's going to get Trump will sue.
I know. But what I want to tell you is I actually thought Sebastian Stan did a good job. It's a movie I would actually watch again, probably, just to kind of pick up on things I missed. So, and I just found out today, in fact, this morning, he was also in that movie, A Better Man.
Yeah.
The comedy. So I didn't put 2 and 2 together. So anyway, I just want to at least say sort of a nod to Sebastian Stan. I thought he did a really good job. That movie was pretty shocking. And I know it didn't make Best Picture, but definitely was worth a watch. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll try to catch it there during the week before the awards on Sunday. I'd like to see it. I just didn't get around to it.
It's more
for me. Yeah, based on kind of what I saw and didn't see, I'll probably go with Ralph Fiennes for Conclave. I really like Conclave a lot. I'd watch that one again, as we're talking about, movies you'd watch again. So for me, I think I'd go with that one. It's kind of like a movie maybe meant for older folks. We were joking about, some of these movies, especially when we get into things like in Anora and The Substance, which were crazy movies at times. But Conclave was like a very old-fashioned movie. It was basically, characters just talking to each other for a couple of hours, right? There was no effects, there was no CGI, there was no, shock cuts. Like it was, it's quiet, it was definitely an older person's movie, but very, I thought, thoughtful and kind of interesting and timely, sadly, right? The Pope right now, very sick, and who knows what's going to happen with him as we speak. And this movie's about, the Pope passing away and electing a new Pope. So also timely. So that was my pick there. Let's do actress in the leading role, maybe the most stacked category. I don't know, or the one that's getting a lot of attention. I'd love Patrick to kind of tell us what the buzz is on this category, but the nominees are Cynthia Erivo in Wicked, Carla Sofia Gascon, Emilia Perez, Mikey Madison, Honora, Demi Moore in The Substance, and Fernanda Torres, I'm Still Here. I did see almost all of these. It's an interesting category for sure. Patrick, what are the sort of, I know you follow the betting markets and whatnot. What's kind of the buzz on this category?
Yeah, I follow I like to follow the precursor awards as well as the betting markets just to kind of get an idea. This, and I forget if I said this at the top of the show, but this, as somebody who does fill out ballots and puts, $10 on it, it's really,
there you go.
I try to recoup that money, so I got to have a good ballot. It really has been one of the more interesting years in terms of there is a lot of categories that could go one way or the other, which you want. You want that entertaining thing. If every category is a slam dunk, it's not nearly as fun. Then you're losing the money based on who you put for production design, which I believe Wicked is the favorite for that one. But Best Actress in a Leading Role, obviously, I think this was a much more interesting category. You go back 2 months before some very unfortunate tweets are unearthed coming from Carla Sofia Gascon. That whole controversy probably not only tanks her odds in this category, but also the movie for Best Picture, which was the number 2 favorite at one point. But this is really a 2-horse race, but it really could go to either of them between Mikey Madison and for Nora, and then Demi Moore for The Substance. And I think they're both worthy. And I think in a sense, it is kind of funny that it's coming down between the much younger, relatively just starting out her career, versus the older, more accomplished actor, been around a while, given the themes of The Substance, kind of very thematic there. In terms of who I would pick, and who I think is probably going to, I don't know. I think Demi Moore might win. But I would probably pick, I'd probably pick Mikey Madison in Nora. But actually, if we're just doing the one that I would pick, I'm picking Fernanda Torres. I think her performance is very overlooked. I think not a lot of people have seen, and Erivo also was great in Wicked. I have to give her her due there. But I think I'm Still Here. Maybe a lot of people will. There's 2 international films in the Best Picture category. Maybe not everyone's watching them, especially given the reception of Emilia Perez, and also it's kind of difficult to stream a lot of these movies. But I'm Still Here. I would fully recommend it. It is one of my favorites out there, and I think Torres in that film is brilliant. She does all the subtle things about acting right. She really brings you into the character, brings you into the story, and I think uses her talent as an actress to convey the weight of the suffering, but also the weight of the joy in moments when it's appropriate throughout the film. So I would say probably if I were a betting man, I would go with Demi Moore. She did win the SAG last night, and to actually win, but I would pick Fernanda Torres.
Wow. Well, you've made me want to see the one movie which I have not seen, which is I'm Still Here. So I was on the fence. It's not available where I live right now, so I'll have to put some effort into seeing it. But I'm glad you mentioned Cynthia Erivo for Wicked. I think one thing I liked about her was just knowing the behind the scenes that she sang live through the entire movie. She was doing all of her own stunts while singing. And it was also those little nuances of her facial expressions as she was acting where there were no words, where I was really entranced in what she was doing. I don't think she'll win, but that's who I would want to win. So, Steve, what about you?
Yeah, I think I'd probably go with Mikey Madison in Honora. The Substance to me was just, I don't know. I think it was just too much for me, honestly. And honestly, I kind of like the supporting actress in that movie, who is is it Margaret Qualley? Patrick, is that her name? I'm not sure.
I believe so. Yeah.
Who I thought was just as good as Demi Moore, if not better, in a weird way. So yeah, I didn't love The Substance either. Probably it's a difficult watch just from an aesthetic perspective, just the subject matter, but just the way it's presented. And I also thought it was kind of curious that that both Anora and The Substance, which this category sort of comes down to for me, kind of at their core are the same type of story, not just a little bit different. Demi Moore is not fighting, the Demi Moore character is fighting this idea that she's now too old and losing her looks and losing her kind of relevance, right, to younger actresses or younger performers, and doesn't have a lot of self-worth, right? That's basically the message there. And the same thing in Anora, right? Especially when you get to the end, the very end of Anora, I won't give it away, but that to me, that was like, this is another woman, a younger woman in this case, but has no self-worth, right, for various reasons, right? And I thought they were kind of the same movie in that regard, but I liked them both. But yeah, I'll go with Mikey Madison and Anora. Anora, another movie, don't watch it with your little kids, or anybody you could be a little squeamish around.
I think the first scene is in an exotic club. So
yeah, there's a lot of adult content, let's just put it that way, in this movie.
You know what, Patrick, I have a question for you before you even get to the sort of Best Picture and Best Director. Do you, in your experience of just sort of analyzing these over the years, do you think that the people who are voting need to like a movie for it to win? Because I feel like sometimes I don't like the movie, but I can appreciate what the person is doing. Where do you stand on that?
Yeah, so I think yes and no to give you the unsatisfactory, but expand on it answer to that question. I think a lot of the Oscar viewers view themselves as, you're kind of trying to take a step back and look at it objectively. So maybe someone watches, The Brutalist and says, well, I felt it was too long, but I can recognize this is a good movie. It's just, not for me. Or somebody watches, Conclave and is like, well, I personally didn't, super appreciate it. I can recognize that the ensemble cast objectively was good or what have you. Obviously all art is subjective. So I think in that sense, maybe not necessarily, but also just because I brought up The Brutalist, one of the headlines this award season was Academy Award voters struggling to finish watching The Brutalist may hamper the film's chances at the awards. And I think maybe that could even be part of the reason. Well, I won't talk about Best Picture yet, but there is a level of these are humans in the industry. A lot of them, have connections who either friends who are working on it or friends of friends. And there is a huge multi-million-dollar industry of courting Academy voters because there are huge financial incentives, especially for indie films, to get nominated. So if they are being produced by studios, there will be, lobbying efforts of sponsored events and meet and greets and other stuff like that. You see it more with the Golden Globes and the Emmys as well. But I think there is a lot that goes into it. But I do think at the end of the day, more often than not, the better film or a film that certainly has an artistic case to win those types of films end up doing pretty well.
Thank you. Because I know it's not as simple as just us going to see a movie and liking it or not liking it, right? There's, like you said, a lot that goes into it.
Yeah, for sure. I think, all right, let's get into sort of Best Picture, Best Director. Let's kind of do them both at the same time since all the directors are from Best Picture nominated films. There's 10 of them. We'll go through them real quick. I'll sort of go from top to bottom, quick snippet of the plot in case someone needs a reminder or isn't aware. And then we'll just do quick comments on the movie and then make our picks. The first movie is Anora. We talked about it some. A young escort from Brooklyn meets and impulsively marries the son of a Russian oligarch. And once the news reaches Russia, her fairy tale is threatened as his parents set out for New York to get the marriage annulled. I like this movie a lot. I was surprised. I didn't know anything about it, including the description when I started to watch it. And so that first scene was a bit shocking to me, but it's to me a movie you do want to see how it turns out. It was quite riveting for me. I like the performances a lot, and I like the movie a lot. I'm not sure I'd pick it to win, but it's very, very strong contender. Patrick, this one's probably high on the list too, I would say, for contenders for this year's Best Picture.
Yeah, it's at this point, it's shaking down. It's kind of a 3-horse race, but Nora is solidly in front. in terms of precursor awards and what the betting markets are saying. This is one of them. If I had to pick one to win just based off of pure, not what I think should win, it would be this one. I think it's certainly, I don't know, I liked it. It was kind of in the middle of the pack for me as far as my favorites go in terms of all the Best Picture films. It's good. It's a good movie. I think there are areas that it could have been tightened up. And I think at times I wasn't always 100% on board with what we've been talking about. Like, do we care about these characters? At times I wasn't always 100% on board. But I think overall, especially the end really kind of brought it around for me for a film I was kind of apprehensive about. The end worked for the film, kind of gives it a lot more clarity. It's all these movies except for like one are pretty good. So,
You know what? I put it right in the middle as well. I don't want to give anything away because I do think people should watch it, but it was kind of billed as a modern day Cinderella story. No, it's not. It is legit 30 minutes at the start in strip clubs where it's dark and the things you would expect to go on are going on. And then it's a good hour or more of people yelling in Russian mostly. So I was just super anxious during the whole thing. Like, I kept thinking, like, when is the Cinderella part? Like, I don't know. I felt let down in that regard. So I think if you go into it knowing like this is a movie that's going to cause some emotion in you, I think you should feel anxious when you're watching some of the things that she goes through. And if you go into it with that mindset, I think it is a good movie for sure. I could see how it could win, but it's right in the middle for me.
Yeah, I liked it, but yeah, same thing. I didn't know anything about it going in, which maybe helped, but
Not a Cinderella.
definitely not a Cinderella story. Next up, Patrick, I want you to help us with this one, The Brutalist. We talked about its length and its runtime, but the synopsis quickly, a visionary architect and his wife flee post-war Europe in 1947 to rebuild their legacy and witness the birth of a modern United States, and their lives are changed forever by a mysterious wealthy client. Patrick, what is like what does a Brutalist have going for it here in this category?
I think Brutalist, is probably that number 3 favorite for me personally. I have not seen Nickel Boys, but I'm assuming, just knowing everything about that film, I am going to enjoy it. So that disclaimer there. The Brutalist was my favorite out of the 10 films. It is, everyone says this, it is long. I think, for me personally, the intermission did help, but I think the reason that I enjoyed it so much, it's not a complex film. It's a film where it kind of lays out a lot of different things that it's saying about society and about America, and you kind of can follow those threads throughout the film, and at the same time you are following the plot of Laszlo Toth, this person who's experienced such great suffering and is dealing with it in a way that isn't necessarily, without spoiling the film, not 100%, straightforward and perfect. And yet here he is, this great visionary creative trying to build something in America. And the film is basically around all of the difficulties associated with that. I think the way I've seen it described is it is a new American epic, and I would agree with that. And I think one of the things that really elevates it to that level of my most favorite film of the Best Pictures that I've seen is the score. The music is absolutely brilliant. I was upset that Challengers didn't get a nomination for Best Score, but after having watched The Brutalist, it would have lost anyway. It really is just well made and carried through by great actors. The person who we haven't really necessarily discussed a lot, I think we kind of glossed over him, is Guy Pearce. In this movie is Harrison Lee Van Buren. He is a great antagonist for the film, and it kind of antagonist, but like maybe he's not the antagonist. It's all very ambiguous, and I just can't speak highly enough about this film. It's unfortunate though. You can have all these nuanced criticisms of a film, but when you see a movie that really just takes away your ability to speak. That's kind of how I felt about The Brutalist.
I will watch it once it comes to like one of the streaming platforms so we can access more readily. But yeah, for sure. Thank you for that. Trish, you did not sit through this whole thing, right? Or did you?
I did. I drove to Omaha to watch it in the theater, and I was glad I did. I did question a little bit. I think it could have been cut a little bit shorter, from my opinion. But when I watch it, I think this is an Oscar movie. Like you just have that feeling. To me, an Oscar movie needs to be something that challenges my beliefs or that I learn from. That's what I look for. And do I care about that? Again, the character. I don't have to like them. That's kind of why I asked Patrick his opinion on, do you need to like something to think it's worthy of winning? I do have it in the top 3 for that reason. But with the caveat that I did watch Nickel Boys yesterday, and now that I've seen that, I think I would put Nickel Boys above The Brutalist. So I'd love to hear Patrick, like afterwards, when you've watched Nickel Boys, to see where you would slot that and if it would beat out The Brutalist for you.
Yeah, let's keep moving. We got quite a few more to get through. A Complete Unknown, well-received movie, I think, and well-known movie. Big star in the leading role. In 1961, an unknown 19-year-old Bob Dylan arrives in New York City with his guitar and forges relationships with musical icons on his meteoric rise, culminating in a groundbreaking performance that reverberates around the world. Patrick talked a little bit earlier about sometimes the challenge of rewarding actors or actresses for just kind of impersonating, if you will, a well-known figure like Bob Dylan is. But also, the movie itself, Patrick, what are your thoughts just on it overall as a movie?
I thought it was a good movie. It was one of the first ones I've seen, and it kind of suffers from almost every movie I've watched after it in the Best Picture category being substantively better. It's a good movie, and I'm not trying to disparage that or the work that Timothée Chalamet and the rest of the cast really put into it, especially as it relates to the singing. He does sound a lot like Bob Dylan. But see, that's the problem. It's like I'm saying, oh, he sounds a lot like Bob Dylan. I guess he sounds good, but that's kind of that thing you're comparing it to. I don't really have too much to say about it other than I think it's a good film, but I found the third act, especially, you mentioned it in that description, culminating in a performance that reverberates around the world. That's not really how the movie frames it. Kind of just comes out of nowhere, and most of the movie is him like being a bad boyfriend and like singing, and it's good. I'm not trying to say it's not good, but it wasn't my favorite.
Okay.
I will say I don't think it will win, but it is my favorite of all that I watched. But again, I was watching with the perspective of I felt they were doing a good job with the singing. I liked the story. I liked all the actors in it, and it was enjoyable. And again, do I think that's an Oscar winner? No, I don't. But definitely a movie that I enjoyed watching. And I'm not going into it was not a huge Bob Dylan fan, but I will say after seeing it, I appreciate his music more than I did before I started. So there's that.
Yeah, I would agree.
I decided not to drive 45 minutes to see this one, so that was my sort of judgment on it. But I will watch it once it's a little bit more accessible. Here's one that I'll talk about briefly. It was my favorite of what I saw in its Conclave. When Cardinal Lawrence is tasked with leading one of the world's most secretive and ancient events, selecting a new pope, he finds himself at the center of a web of conspiracies and intrigue that could shake the very foundation of the Catholic Church. I like this movie a lot. Maybe again, because I said it's kind of reminded me of an old school drama, lots of dialogue, lots of talking, good understanding, diving into what we understand about certain characters. I was intrigued. I wanted to know how it was going to turn out. And then, so performances were good. I really liked this movie a lot. Admittedly, I missed a couple of the other well-received movies, but for me, my favorite, and because maybe it's the historical element that I'm interested into and some of the settings and all that, but that really behind the scenes look at something I would have never guessed it could be that political, right, for something like this. But I was fascinated by it and I enjoyed it a lot.
Yeah, I agree. I saw it. That was the first one I saw of the 10, and it was enjoyable. Like you, I think I probably appreciated some of the, it was a nice pace and everything seemed to go just fine. But to me, it was a little bit like, did I really learn something? I don't know. I mean, I'm not Catholic, but I certainly have known about that process. So again, I didn't feel like the movie itself was lending to any learning on my part. So I don't know, still in the top 5, I would say, but not my favorite. Patrick, what about
you? Think of Conclave?
I would say Conclave was my third favorite. I really did enjoy it. It is kind of a film designed to appeal to my sensibilities. We've got an election. we've got intrigue, we've got it. And I think it's interesting you bring it up. It felt like more of an older style movie, because I think that is kind of one of the trends, in the film. You've got a cardinal vaping. Ironically, he's the traditionalist. There were a lot of memes about that online. But I think that, really, it was one of those movies I had like questions and criticisms. I'm like, why is John Lithgow's character so important? And then you watch more of the movie and you're like, oh, it was a burned reveal. Cardinal Tremblay in the film. But yeah, I think it was a really brilliant movie. I think maybe, as soon as, well, I won't spoil it, but yeah, I think that it had a lot to offer, and I think this is just a film where you've got a great script and you've got a lot of great actors and actresses. You just say, all right, it's a simple story, but they did a lot of actually of things with the cinematography as well that I like. They did a lot of extreme wide shots in moments where Cardinal Lawrence was really meant to feel incredibly powerless and, completely, like this one shot in particular, just like he is just so small compared to the giant area where they're filming it, not a cathedral, but the area where they're filming it. So you see these giant Roman pillars, and you see Cardinal Lawrence so small as this gargantuan process is about to begin. It was a great movie. I was definitely a fan.
Yeah, loved it myself, and I'll probably rewatch that one too at some point. All right, next up, a movie I will not rewatch: Dune Part 2. Paul Atreides, also played by Timothée Chalamet, who's the star of 2 of these movies now. Paul unites with the Freeman while on a warpath of revenge against the conspirators who destroyed his family. Facing a choice between the love of his life and the fate of the universe, that's fairly heavy, he endeavors to prevent a terrible future. And this is one of those movies that I would have benefited extremely by having seen Dune Part 1, which I never saw. So
my God,
this is not one you can dive right into without knowing what the heck is going on in Dune Part 1. So that was maybe one of the knocks on it for me. But it was fine. I don't like this kind of movie in general, though. This big, over-the-top fantasy war set piece kind of movie. And again, that's maybe my age, coming out there. But it's just not my thing. I would have never seen this movie. Otherwise, we were going to talk about it today. So, Trish, what did you think about this one?
I would just say same. We'll let Patrick have this one. I watched about 45 minutes of it. I can see why a movie like this gets nominated. It's not really my jam to watch it. So, Patrick, why don't you tell us about the movie?
Didn't you raise me watching Star Wars? This is like very similar.
Yeah, but I liked Star Wars when I was 15. I liked Star Wars a lot, So.
Okay. Well, I guess I'm a little bit closer to 15. I liked it. I'm getting criticism. I showed my list. This is my 4th favorite movie. I have it ranked above Anora, so a couple of my friends were bullying me over that. This is the film I saw it.
Never right, so yeah.
This is the film I saw first, and I think it also suffers. Those films you watch like really early on, especially in this case, months and months ago. Frankly, it's a miracle it did get nominated at all. It benefits from the fact that Dune Part 1 is basically just 2.5 hours of world building. If you have not seen that one, it really kind of grounds you into the world, and it sets you up for this tragedy of Paul Atreides' character. His entire family's killed. His way of life is completely destroyed. Then you begin in Dune Part 2. He's building everything back up again, and ultimately you get the payoff where at the end, of the movie, he's going off on his quest, and you see how his quest ends. For that reason, I really enjoyed it. But again, you do kind of need to have that foundation of Part 1. But a brilliant film in my opinion. And I think I'm so bad at pronouncing names, but the director, Denis Villeneuve, I butchered that. He should have been nominated for Best Directing, in my opinion. But Dune Part 2, I'm a fan.
Patrick, one question in general about movies. I think when you look at the slate for the Oscars, the movies are so different. And sometimes when you watch the Golden Globes, they at least break them into some more categories. What is your opinion overall? I mean, because to me, a Dune 2 should be more of a blockbuster movie up against a Star Wars or maybe one of the Guardians of the Galaxy movies. How do you see that though? Do you feel like it's in the right place being in the Oscars, or?
Yeah, I think it is a significantly elevated blockbuster, even though it does kind of have the budget and the special effects. I think it really is way. I'm working on a Captain America review, and just night and day compared to Dune Part 2, significantly worse film than Dune Part 2. But I'm reminded of the meme that I've seen of like from Mad Men where he's yelling at Peggy, "That's what the money is for." Because that's what the money is for. There have been talks in the Oscars of trying to make a category for box office achievement. And maybe that's the direction things will go, and I'm not necessarily 100% opposed to it, but I think the Oscars really are for highlighting these more so these craft films. But when you do see a film with a big budget, like the Lord of the Rings movies were very competitive. That's you've got I personally, if I had $300 million, I'd try to make an Oscar movie. But granted, when you've done that, you kind of need to make $800 million to get your money back. That's kind of top of mind rather than essentially an industry award. But
yeah. Not going to win. I'll just leave it at that. A
that's
movie,
true.
Patrick, I'm sure you liked less, and we'll let you talk about it quickly. You did a 35-minute takedown of Emilia Perez. We'll ask you to maybe do a 2-minute takedown here. Emilia Perez follows 3 remarkable women in Mexico, each pursuing their own happiness. Cartel leader Emilia enlists underappreciated lawyer Rita to help fake her death so that she can finally live authentically as her true self. This movie I liked more than you did, Patrick, but tell us why Emilia Perez is problematic from your point of view.
Yeah, I mean, there are a couple things with this, and it was one of the movies. Again, I do kind of do more of that mystery style, the Theater 3000, watching the movie in the theater and laughing at it because it's not very good. And, it's just a shame to have to be doing that with one of the Best Picture nominees. Often there's one that I don't necessarily like that much. And in this case, the issues behind it really stem down to a couple things. That it's a very Mexican story in nature. The director was French, and he openly admitted, I didn't do any research. He also called the Spanish language the language of like the poor, developing, and struggling. Or he said something, that's not an exact quote. He said something like that. The main actress, Carla Sofia Gascon, she was in numerous controversies over just some very old tweets. And when I say old tweets, they're from like 2021. Which I won't reiterate, but even beyond all of that, just the main subject of the story is one of this transgender experience, which as I talk about in the video, there are a lot of issues with it in terms of how it was actually depicted. The main thing being, and this is, in my opinion, but it is pretty strongly supported by the text and tone of the film, her transition from a cartel boss who is a man to a woman who's no longer a cartel boss. That is kind of portrayed by the movie as a clean slate, and the act of transitioning is something that is a virtuous thing, which in real life, it's not neither virtuous or not virtuous. It's just is. It's a person better coming to live with themselves and live with their gender identity. It's just like there's no moral judgment on it at all. There's no moral value to it. But in the movie, she goes from, there's a murdering cartel boss. Now she's doing good and trying to help fix an issue that she solved. She makes a business or a charity to like find bodies of missing people, which was an issue that she was responsible for. And that's also one of the biggest problems in Mexico is the missing people epidemic. And the movie made it into a song. It's very, very tone deaf. Now I think it's fortunate it will not be winning Best Picture, because that would have been a real stain on the Academy. And after having just picked Green Book, we just got over all the Green Book controversy of that film shouldn't have won, and then they were going to pick Emilia Perez. We've dodged that bullet, thank God. It's hard to keep defending the Oscars for some of these decisions, but fortunately, I think they're going to make the right one and not pick this one.
Yeah, agree. It was hard to watch. I didn't watch the whole thing. It was just difficult for all the reasons you said. I don't even understand. Why was it a musical? Like, why? None of it made sense, really. But
don't watch Emilia Perez. Watch My Friends Call Me Pat review of Emilia Perez on his YouTube channel. That's my recommendation.
Much more entertaining.
All right, we've got a few more to hit real quick. Let's go to something a little lighter. Let's go to Wicked. Elphaba, a misunderstood young woman because of her green skin, and Glinda, a popular girl, become friends at Shiz University in the Land of Oz. After an encounter with the wonderful Wizard of Oz, their friendship reaches a crossroads. Wizard of Oz, I knew nothing about this. I'd never seen the musical Wicked, never read about it, didn't know anything about it. So
Same.
the first time through with Wicked, I had to understand a little bit more about the history of it. I watched a couple of videos where people explain the world of Wizard of Oz and how the timeline all works, which helps some. And on the second watch, this movie made more sense to me, but really enjoyable. And Trish, you said this maybe is like a different kind of category of movie in a way, but fun, a musical, but in a good way, really good performances. I love both the acting performances, the main acting performances. I enjoyed this movie a ton. I don't think it's an Oscar winner movie, but really good movie. And I'd recommend really anybody to watch this movie.
Yeah, it's a fun movie and it's very entertaining. I think it goes back a little bit maybe to Patrick, what you were talking about in terms of the studio, I guess, pushing certain movies on the Academy, right? I think there was a number of things around Wicked where that's being done. And again, I don't know. Does it make me think? Does it make me learn? It's my criteria, and who knows what the Academy thinks. But yeah, it just didn't feel like it felt right as a Best Picture, although it's a really fun movie and one I'll probably watch again and again, right? What did you think, Patrick? You hadn't seen Wicked before, right?
No, I went into it completely blind, which I do appreciate from a critical angle, as I'm not viewing it as a movie adaptation of an existing musical. I'm also sort of looking at the musical with unvarnished eyes. I imagine that the actual stage production would be a lot better than the film. I had some issues with it, but I did like the movie. It's towards the bottom for me in terms of my list. I think it seems to be, as we're pointing out, like, sort of a blockbuster movie being in the Oscars. That's been almost a recent trend, like especially in the past, like kind of the after the pandemic era of the movies, where studios really want those box offices to return, and they've just not quite returned to the same level that they were in 2019 or 2020, right before COVID. You've got inclusions of films like Black Panther, you've got inclusions of films like Barbie, and now you've got an inclusion of a film like Wicked. They're not going to win. I think it's a good movie, but the problem for me is it's just competing up against great movies. And there are things that I have complaints with the story that a lot of people who have seen the musical would probably roll their eyes at. Like, you're really telling me you think it's weird it's called Shiz University? Yes, I do think it's weird that it's called Shiz University. And they don't ever address it. And I'm like, okay. And like, why are they, the animals are losing their speech, and Michelle, I won't spoil that part, but it's like, I liked it. I think also some of the ensemble songs kind of were not my favorite, but then again, you've got like great songs in there, like Popular and Defying Gravity, like right away, carrying weight for basically any other song that I feel would be underperforming. And the last thing I'll say really quickly is that just the entire film is undersaturated, and whoever did the color grading for this film, they've been bullied a lot online, but frankly, they should feel bad. Sorry.
I just thought too this had a little bit of the Grinch kind of feel for me. Like, I always felt like I never liked the Grinch story, the Grinch Who Stole Christmas, because I always felt the stupid Who's like just deserved to have their Christmas stolen from them.
Oh, I forgot this take.
And I feel like the stupid people of Oz, like how dumb were they that they were just duped by a guy with a loudspeaker, and some special effects, and they all like knuckled under like for years and years. Like, I didn't get that either. So, then maybe that's my problem. Let's talk about
coming from Omaha. Like, it never like landed until I watched this movie that they're saying Omaha. I'm like, oh my gosh, like, how stupid am I? Right? It's one of those movies.
Okay, I'm Still Here. A mother is forced to reinvent herself when her family's life is shattered by an act of arbitrary violence during the tightening grip of a military dictatorship in Brazil, 1971. I did not see this movie.
I didn't either.
Just based on that blurb, I would think I would like it. That feels like that's my kind of movie. Patrick, you did see this. Tell us what you thought.
Yeah, I know we're running short on time, so I'll keep it brief. I think this film is brilliant. It's my second favorite. For a while, it kind of goes, I go back and forth between this and The Brutalist. I think it's a true story, and that's something that maybe I didn't know going into it. Maybe it's better to not know it. Maybe it is. I think the reason I say that, though, is because after you learn it, the movie tells you and shows you pictures of the people you've just been watching. It's a necessary story. It's a story that obviously, like, there's not a ton of Brazilian history or Brazilian politics that makes it to America, just kind of the way the cultural diffusion, the directionality of it all. But this is even a story that just isn't very well known. And I think it's so important because it's talking essentially about what happens when a government overreaches, what happens when you're living under a government that is openly and abusing their power, but is denying it and refuses to accept culpability. And what do? You still have to live your life, but then all of a sudden, at any given day, your life can be interrupted and forever changed. And that's something you even get from the trailer. Literally, just watching the trailer, you get that same sensation. And really can't speak highly enough about it. I think it is just it's also incredibly well acted. It's incredibly well shot. And for a period piece, I think it also it does a great job of grounding you in the time and the setting as well.
Good stuff, man. I will definitely go see this movie for sure when I get a chance.
You have to let me know your thoughts.
Yeah. Thank you, Patrick, for breaking that down. Okay, last two real quick. Trish, you take this one. Nickel Boys. You saw this. Based on the Pulitzer Prize-winning novel by Colson Whitehead, Nickel Boys chronicles the powerful friendship between two young African-American men navigating the harrowing trials of reform school in Florida. What'd you think?
I actually loved it. I just saw it. Maybe it's the recency effect. I don't know. But I think there's some really good things. I do feel like when I was watching it, it's an Oscar type movie. Again, you're learning a lot of things you didn't know. While it's not a true story, it is based on an actual boys' reformatory in Florida in the 60s. So
it's based on a novel, so it's fictionalized at least, right?
Fictionalized. Yeah. But what they do, which I like, so two things, they shoot it from one of the characters' perspectives most of the time. So it's a little bit difficult to watch until your brain kind of adjusts, at least for me, to that sort of seeing the world through his eyes. But it was also really cool because as I was sitting there watching it, and Patrick, I'd love to hear your take on this. Have you seen it yet, or you haven't seen it?
No, but I'm very excited for that first-person filmmaking. I think that's so innovative and creative.
The one thing it did for me is he's kind of, and this doesn't give anything away, he's kind of remembering both the bad things that happened through his childhood, but also some of the good things. And it kind of gave me flashes of my own childhood, like remembering some things I hadn't thought about in a long time. So that was just kind of a cool effect, I think, putting yourself in that space. And the other thing I would say is they did intersperse a lot of real photographs from schools just like this, from that time period, Martin Luther King's impact, all those things. So while it's not exactly a true story, it makes you feel like it is. And I just really cared about those characters that were in it. I liked it.
Yeah, Trish, thank you for breaking that down. I will try to catch this one too, because this does seem like the kind of movie I would enjoy as well. And I tried to watch it, but I had a very dodgy Far Eastern stream I was trying to access. Thank you, Patrick, for hooking me up to that.
You know what, too? I think this is another one. By the time you get to the end, even though you're figuring out some things you didn't understand at first, you're still a little confused, like, oh, wait, did that just end like that? And I felt like Anora was kind of like that, where I went like, oh, is that how that just ended? That's not. So I didn't anticipate it. And I like movies that do that to me, where again, it makes you think like, ooh, I better watch that again and see what I missed. Could I have did that? Right.
Yeah. All right. One more to touch, and then we'll pick our director favorites too. We quickly gloss over that, but we'll get back to that. The last movie, prepare yourself if you're going to sit down for this one, not knowing what it's about. It's called The Substance. A fading celebrity takes a black market drug, a cell-replicating substance that temporarily creates a younger, better version of herself. This is quite the film. It's an interesting idea, so I like that. I like the idea behind it. It speaks to a lot of problems in contemporary society, particularly in modern society that values youth, values looks, can be ageist at times for various reasons. But it's quite a sensory overload. Some of the things that actually happen in this movie, there's a lot of blood. There's, it's a little gory at times. It's loud and jarring. I liked it okay. Didn't love it, and I think it's definitely not for everybody. This movie for sure. What do you guys think about The Substance?
I'm just going to let Patrick talk on this one. I'm just going to say I put it at number 7 on my list, and that's kind of where it sits. So for the same reasons you said. Patrick, what about you, though?
Yeah, mine's number 6, probably be number 7 after I slot Nickel Boys in there because, probably going to enjoy more than this film. Just going to go out on a limb and say that. But I did like it and I did enjoy it. That being said, I think I think the thematic messaging of it was something that I really appreciated. I do feel like society is very age obsessed. You see it just as soon as you age, as soon as you reach over the age of 18, you kind of immediately value or see that value and that premium that's placed on youth, because it's one of the things ultimately you can never get back, and it's this sort of immutable currency. And I think the film dealing with stuff like that was good. That being said, there were areas like there's one of the first scenes is where Dennis Quaid, who was great in this film after a huge miss in Reagan, or he's eating shrimp just like so aggressively and viscerally.
Yeah.
And I'm sure, when you texted me that you'd watch this and Nora in the same weekend, I was like, those don't seem like films that you would enjoy that much. But like, just like, I wish we could have actually gotten more of that energy going forward. I think, if anything, as much as the film is constantly harping on this message, there's a lot of time in the middle of it where Demi Moore's character is kind of just sitting and watching TV, which in and of itself is saying something about the film's message. I just wish it could have been a little bit more active in terms of what was happening. But ultimately, it's a great film. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, I mean, I can see why it's on this list. I see why it made it here. I see why people were talking about it. I do understand why Demi Moore is getting a lot of accolades and may win an Oscar for it. But again, could be just, maybe not my cup of tea. But I watched Anora and The Substance kind of on the same day, I think. And Anora I like much better than this one. So, all right, quickly, we mentioned all these movies. We talked about all 10 of them. The directing nominees, just 5 out of these 10. Sean Baker for Nora, Brady Corbett for The Brutalist, Coralie Fargier for The Substance, Jacques Audiard for Emilia Perez, and James Mangold for A Complete Unknown. Patrick, I'm going to guess you're going to go with Brady Corbett from The Brutalist, but tell me otherwise if I'm wrong.
No, I'm actually going to go with, this is maybe, this is something that I've seen outside of the awards ceremony that's influenced me. I'm going to give it to Sean Baker. I watched his speech at, I believe it, I forget, the Spirit Awards. I watched his speech at the Spirit Awards, where he talked about the importance of independent filmmaking, and of the fact that indie filmmakers, as he called himself, there's this divide. There are filmmakers who will make an indie film as a calling card to get a studio film. And he described himself in his career, he wants to keep doing these independent films where he's not as focused on what the studios want, what the box offices want. He wants to do that for his career. I think that's so admirable. That's a true artist. Not to say that Brady Corbett isn't also a true artist. I just found his speech very compelling. In terms of like the actual nuts and bolts of the film, I would have to give it to Brady Corbett. But they're both kind of cut from that same cloth. Brady Corbett, I believe he was the one reporting that he didn't take a salary for 3 years in the process of making The Brutalist. And that was also one of the issues that Sean Baker talked about. And I think the fact that they're both there, they're both kind of the two front runners, really points to this sort of this huge issue that exists in Hollywood. DVD sales have evaporated. The money to make these films has to come from somewhere. And, I just wish, honestly, a lot of these movies were in movie theaters longer, because I think especially for some of these prestige releases, it's just very difficult to watch them. But, people got to go to the movies more. People got to support these films. Both of them were the ones. But I would, I guess from a technical level, I'd go with Brady Corbett. Just I found The Brutalist very impressive.
Yeah. Trish, do you have a director pick?
I think it's Brady Corbett. I think for the reasons Patrick stated. Also, when you compare it to Anora, I feel like Anora was just a more simple story, whereas The Brutalist is so complex. So if I'm thinking about directing a more straightforward story versus something like The Brutalist, I would just probably lean to The Brutalist. There were so many characters, so many countries involved, and just the topics.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Sean Baker myself too, Patrick, for some of the reasons you said, and just that was my favorite of the 5 movies where the directors were nominated. That was my favorite, so I'll pick that one. We're an hour into the show, and I know we try to get these done a little bit quicker, but the Oscar show is always a really long one. Is there any other random category, performance, anything you want to shout out? Sometimes, Trish, you watch some documentaries, anything just on that, here's the full list of Oscars is really, really long. We didn't talk about most of the categories. Anything else you want to throw out there before the show Sunday?
I don't want to do that, but I do have a question for Patrick. Again, just because you're more of an expert here when it comes to movies and the behind the scenes things. Do you believe that if a movie wins Best Picture, that the director should also be Best Director? Because I know there's kind of a split opinion on that.
I think it depends. I think usually, but not always. I think generally it makes more sense for them to win it. It makes more sense more times than it doesn't. That being said, a film can be Best Picture like due to something like the writing, which, the writing is something the director has a hand in influencing in terms of line delivery and how an actor is interpreting it and all that. But if a film is especially driven by elements that are like by the writing, but then obviously a film that's been driven by strong acting performance, you have to credit the directing. But I think more technical films, more films that are kind of more beautiful on like a level, including their cinematography and their sound editing and stuff like that. But yeah, generally, but also there are times when, especially, with the Oscars, a lot of times they do kind of award career Oscars, which complicates the process. So I'd say, in this case, if Anora does win Best Picture, it's also kind of like, the scene in Mean Girls where she rips up the crown into two pieces. In the sense of like, if The Brutalist does not win Best Picture, well, we could give Brady Corbett the nod for directing because the directing was impressive, even if we do ultimately go Anora for Best Picture.
Okay. It'll be interesting to see how it shakes out.
I'm very, yeah.
It's going to be fun. So Oscar Sunday night, this Sunday, we'll get this out really quickly. Apologies to Karen, our producer, for having to edit an hour and 5-minute show. But Patrick, shout out the YouTube channel one more time. And of course, we say thank you for taking the time for us to be with us today.
Yeah, it's My Friends Call Me Pat, and there's a space between each word. I'm also on, Instagram and whatnot. Probably it's at My Friends Call Me Patrick. I think someone had My Friends Call Me Pat on Instagram. I was really upset about that.
Sure.
Yeah, but yeah, I do, like I said, I kind of do a lot of this movie stuff. I do a lot of coverage of like internet culture, of television, and just sort of random stuff like that.
Yeah, but it's
generally, yeah.
Congratulations, by the way, on the success of the channel. And yeah.
Thank you. Trying to get to 100,000 this year.
Let's get you there, man. Let's go, everybody. Subscribe to My Friends Call Me Pat. Trish, thank you. This is super fun. I love doing the show. It is a slog. We spend more time on this show than any other show all year long.
And you know what? I think we've been doing it about a decade, so we've talked offline. Maybe we shuffle things around next year. Maybe it's just more of a Workplace Movie Hall of Fame sort of based on an Oscar movie or two. But yeah,
I love that idea. So, well, everybody, thanks for hanging out with us. Thanks for tuning into this episode of At Work America. Trish and I appreciate you listening and being a part of our conversation. If you enjoyed our episode, please subscribe anywhere you get your podcasts, and also on YouTube. We're on YouTube as well. We have slightly fewer subscribers than Patrick, but we have some. And we love a rate, review, 5-star rating, all of it. So thanks for listening. We'll see you next time on the At Work in America show.